mentioned that I worked for Rockwell back in the 80s. Here's my little jacket badge I got as being part of the test team on the B-1. The B-1's an unusual aircraft for the Air Force. Of course, it's the first bomber since the B-52, which was delivered back in the 50s. They started getting deliveries of the B-1 in 1986. A total of 100 B-1B bombers were built. The last one delivered in early 1988. It's also got some firsts for the Air Force in that it's the first all-digital electronic aircraft. So all of the electronics on board are digital electronics. I know a lot of you don't know what that means, and it can get a little confusing, but it just basically means it's a giant computer. Everything works on zeros and ones. Everything is computerized. All the flight controls, all the systems on board, everything is computer controlled. So the other thing is I worked on hydraulics on the aircraft. This is the first Air Force aircraft, I believe, with a 4,000 pound per square inch hydraulic system instead of the usual 3,000 pound per square inch hydraulic system. Part of that higher pressure is to get more force out of the actuators. And we'll talk about the full flying horizontal stabilizer and things like that in a little bit. So I mentioned that it's all digital aircraft. There are 3 flight control computers on board, and you see the 3 pitot tubes there. On this side, there's also 3 on the opposite side here, just aft of the radome. That little device just below the pitot static tubes right here in the center, that's a outside air temperature gauge, of which there's 2 of those as well. These little shark fins here on the front, that's part of the stability augmentation system, or SAS. Those are SAS actuators, and their job is to smooth the ride out of the aircraft during terrain following, where they're low, fast, and can be quite turbulent. You can see, hopefully, information on the under the window. This is aircraft 98. Another observation about this aircraft as it sits is that the wings are swept back to their high-speed flight position. They wouldn't be in this position on the ground normally. They would be forward. That's because they get the highest amount of lift, and also because the flaps will work then. The flaps won't work when you're swept back like this. Here's the tail end of the aircraft. Another way you can tell B-1A has got a pointy tail, and the B-1B is more rounded. All of these antennas that you see back here are offensive and defensive avionics, jammers and things like that. The aircraft does have full flying stabilator. So what that means is that whole thing pivots up and down, and in addition to being the pitch control, it is also the primary roll control of the aircraft. In terrain following mode, the roll capability is restricted, and the roll is done by spoilers on the wings, but that's again you don't want any real rapid maneuvers. You can see these panels sticking up here just under the horizontal stabilizer. Those are vortex generators meant to stir the air up and make sure there's plenty of good airflow over that lower rudder segment right underneath the horizontal stabilizer.